Peter here from Oz Commercial Sewing Machines. Today I'm just going to do a video on how I assemble the tables for the PS 1933B machines. I've already assembled the legs. I'll go through those shortly, but for starters I'll go through the measurements of how I rule out the tables. So I use inches simply because it's easy. So if we come over here to the right hand side, well, it's actually, if it's the right way up, it'd be your left hand. It is the right hand side, sorry. So it's just inverted. This is the back of the table here. This is the rounded front edge of the table up that end. Okay. The first line I put in. That first line I put in is 5 inches from the edge. So you got the outside edge to this line, 5 inches all the way through. And I rule it out just to make it easy for myself, because this area here, you can see I've drilled a hole there. This is where the legs are going to mount to the top of the table. And there's the other one there. So I use this line to line up where the legs are going to go. It'll all make sense in the end. But this space, 5 inches. Now if we come to the back edge, I use a rule of 2 inches across the back. Okay, so all the way down the back, 2 inches. Now I use that mainly so I know where the back of the table legs are going to screw to. I line up the back of those, and I also use this line to put the foot controller. Now the foot controller, you can see there, it's there's 4 self-tapping wood screws, countersunk. Now, they are in a separate bag in the box, but the way you do this, I'll go through the setting up of this device when I put the legs up on the table. Okay, now as we move down, we'll go up to the front of the table here. Now this is the knee lift, electronic knee lift mechanism. Now I use a rule. Okay, if we put this ruler here, 12 inches from that right hand side to there. You can see I've barked it all as well. Okay, and I use 1.5 inches to the front. Okay, and that sits about where you want it to. That should be pretty close to being aligned with the inside of the neck of the machine, which is about where you want to put your legs. So now if we come across, now this gap where I put the drawer, okay, is 10.5 inches. Okay, that makes the table so that the legs, so that they're square and that they sit well on the bench. So you can see I've drilled this one out as well. Okay, there's the second hole. Now, to put the drawer on, I simply, you can see in there, there's an angle. Okay, you can see that little angle there. Now this runner, I use, it's, okay, so in metric, yeah, so that position is, I usually use about a 4.5 or 45 millimeters. Yeah, but I've had to, I haven't had to, but I've moved the leg in, the runner in slightly so that it closes up either side. Okay, so that's the same measurements on all of those. there is adjustability on it, which I've had to do. So 4.5 or 45 millimeters or 4.5 centimeters is my measurement for those. And on this side, from this line, which is 10.5, I use a 4.5 again. Okay, so that gives you the adjustability, but I've had to push that one in a bit as well. So you could probably go a little bit smaller than the 4.5 on each side. 4.5 centimeters, that is. And I make sure and line it up across the front so that it's not overhanging the edge, but it's easy to get to, and that just comes out. Okay, so now we'll move on to the table legs. Now, as we move on to the legs of this bench, now everything that is towards the bench, except for the pitman rod, comes in the box that the bench comes in. Okay, so I always start by putting the uprights together. Okay, so what we have is the lower upright, and if we come down the bottom, we have the upper part of the upright here. Now, they do fit a specific side, and you'll need 1, 2, 3 of the short bolts that come in the drawer for each of those, and you'll also need one of these joiners just to it pulls in hard so that the bench is not going to collapse. Now, I use the lower section of the upper to bolt onto at the top of it. So it's really, you can only go up from there. Now, if you want it a lot shorter, you can move down to this lower section, but you won't be able to use this bolt, the third one from the front. You'll just be using the 2 back ones. All right, so what I do is I build one side. Okay, I get the height to where I want it, I level it off, and then I move on to the other side. Same deal, you've got there, that piece, and you've got your 3 short bolts. Okay, then I put them side by side and I line them up and get the height so that they're both exactly the same, and then I tighten them all up. Next piece I put on is this cross member. Now, there's 4 bolts that hold this one on. They're the short bolts again. They're the same as these ones down here. Okay, so there's 4 of those. There's 2 there and 2 over here. But I don't tighten them up until I've bolted the bench to the table, so that then that just makes it rock solid. Okay, once I've done that, and the legs are, because you've got to move your legs around a bit more, you put in the cross member. Okay, you'll get these spaces in your draw kit as well, okay, with long bolts, and underneath there, underneath here, there is a piece of steel that's been threaded for this bolt that pulls up, and it allows this to not move. Okay, this spacer is to be able to get this as close to the floor as possible. If you're using these, the benches also come with these feet, which are just a flat foot instead of these casters, which we get put in there for our packages. So if you're going to use these feet, we give you the option if you want those feet, but most of the time we just put these casters on. Now, if you're going to use these, we take this spacer out and put it on flush with the legs, because then that would be down about there, give or take, instead of being all the way up there, which is why we've got that spacer. Okay, now if we move to the pedal section, okay, now you can see that we've got all these different grooves here. Now these what hold the pedal brackets. There you can see what I've done. And if we come across here, now I put them on this way so that they're not hanging out this side. They're just a little bit more pleasing to the eyes. Okay, and that's just the standard large bolt again, but I put a washer on there. It's probably it's a little bit difficult to get that washer on because this tab's in the way, but by the time you get it torqued down, this bends out of the way. But you've got to put this pedal on so that there's very little sideways movement. Okay, if there is too much side movement, it could come off, and it makes noise as well when you're trying to sew. So they do adjust by just pushing this side out further. Sorry, this side out further. This one here I put in first, and it just butts up against that curve. This one here is adjustable. I start with it in here and just push it out, and you can see that it's a fairly tight fit. Right, and now this bracket, this is where your two smaller screws go with the two smaller nuts. On the back side down in there. Okay, there's no washer on those, it's just the nuts. Okay, and I set this up somewhere so that they're an even in the middle, so you get room to move it side by side, side to side. But I always set up the pedal before I set up the foot control. Now this pitman arm, this is why I set up the pedal first. So you want this pitman arm to be as straight up and down as possible. So set up your pedal, put this on, put your pitman arm on up here, set your linkage down, and then hook it up so that it's in the foot control. Okay, like that. And then you can plant your foot control and mark the 4 holes for drilling with the back against this line. And that way your pitman rod is as straight as possible. It's straight up and down. Right, and now if we go into the corners or down into these areas, you can see now why these lines, I use those lines to line up these legs so that it all fits neatly and it's all true. Now your machine comes with these little wire holders. Okay, you do need to run this wire from the pedal foot lift, or the knee lift, sorry. You need to route this down around to the back. So it only includes the 2, so it is loose. But if you wanted to go to Bunnings and buy more, you'll find those in the electrical section. They're just cable holders. Okay, so that's the basic assembly of the 1933 table. Now I use the same principle for all of the different tables. The only thing you'll probably find that may vary on the different models, especially if it's a straight stitch, it may be just that. So that would be the only difference, and that would be determined by how wide the neck is on the machine. So I want that unit to be about the middle of the neck. And what I mean by the neck is I want that knee lever to be about in line with there. So if I show you on this machine, okay, you can see that that knee lever is in line with that part of the neck. Okay, so and that's pretty much the same machine. That's a 1987, it's a straight stitch machine. All right, I hope this helps. If you do have any more queries about construction of the Proso benches, feel free to send us a message. Thanks.